once again. What I thought we'd do is we'll just get a brief intro from each of these fabulous 4 panellists, which means that I don't think very hard about introducing them. And I've sort of asked them to set the scene a bit. I think actually Oliver has set the scene for us most brilliantly. So one of the questions I think facing a lot of the Summer of Code interns this year is sort of what next? You know, if I want to start my own business, I want to grow a business, you know, how do I do it? So these guys may or may not have ideas about that. But we'll start to my left with Dave and go for it.
Hello, my name is Dave Moskowitz, and I've been told that I have 5 minutes to impart everything I know to you.
No, 2 minutes.
2 minutes?
Yeah, go crazy.
I'll have to talk about that. No, I'm proud to be a geek. That's the first thing I should say. There are few things I'd rather be doing than sitting in a darkened room at 2 a.m. and coding. And I've always been that way, and the day I stopped doing that, you can dig a hole for me. So yeah, I guess, what can I skip here? I'm currently the chairman of WebFund, which is a company that's dedicated to engineering startup success. We're kind of an angel investor startup incubator. I think we're the only private incubator in New Zealand. So we're really enjoying doing that. We've currently got 4 companies on our books, and we're always looking for more ideas to help go through. We're restricted to online players, and if you're interested in talking to me, we'd love to talk to you. So we invest in taking online startups from zero to international scalability. So I think that the best business ideas happen where top-down meets bottom-up. And a lot of us coding people like to think of things in bottom-up terms, in terms, we've developed some code which is really cool. Like all zero application, you have a business problem, and you can think of a better way to solve it, build a better mousetrap, and you apply bottom-up thinking just to start building that up into something. But we think the really great ideas come from looking at the structural inefficiencies in society and figuring out how to bridge the gaps and how to close those gaps, because that's where the greatest value is to be obtained. Often you can solve those problems fairly simply with technology, but it takes a really broad brush inductive thinking to sort of figure out, okay, what's wrong with society and how are we going to fix it in some code? And that, to me, is really exciting, because you've got to take that inductive thinking, build up to it with some deductive thinking, and that is the sweet spot for making really, really cool stuff happen in the world. Try to solve the big problems. Bootstrap from nothing if you can. Eric Ries has this concept of the lean startup, and he's going to be speaking at WebSock. I'm not on the WebSock committee, but come along to WebSock and see him next month. It's going to be brilliant. Form a team with others. It's really hard to do stuff on your own. Get other smart people around you that you trust to help you out. Often, the things you need for a good startup are good leadership, a great idea, a good implementation. You need someone who knows how to sell, and you need resources. And you never get that in one person, hardly ever. It's really, really rare. So form a team with other people, and it's much easier for investors to invest in a team of people that are functioning well rather than an individual who we wonder whether or not they're ever going to let their ego go to be able to scale to something that's actually going to end up being worth something. Talk to investors as early as possible, even before your idea has had any shape around it. I have a stack of business cards here. Please take one and connect to me on LinkedIn. Once, and I was just talking to Paul Spence about this, if you start your relationship with investors like even before your idea does anything, and then when you find that you need to talk with an investor, you already have a relationship, and you're friendly with them, they know who you are, you know who they are, there's no fear, there's no mistrust, everyone knows. This is a small town in Wellington, everyone knows everyone anyway, so do talk to lots of people early on. Keep in mind that your business has no tangible value until you have a product with paying customers. Celebrate failure. We don't do this very well in New Zealand. In fact, we do it very poorly in New Zealand. Celebrate failure. It is the experience you get that money can't buy. So if you try and fail and try and fail, you never know, you might connect the next time, but you will have learned a lot of things along the way. And I certainly wouldn't fault you for having tried something and not done it the right way. Empathy is the single key quality for running a successful business. Do what you can to develop empathy. Strangely enough, starting a family and being a mildly religious person have both played key roles in my own development of empathy. And both of those things, religion and families, are hugely undervalued by sort of people who can deal with them on a day-to-day basis. So, I mean, if you can't empathize with your customer, you're not going to know what good user experience is. If you can't empathize with your market, you're not going to know what they want. If you can't empathize with your investors, you're not going to know how to develop a relationship with them. Do whatever you can to become as empathetic a person as possible. Develop and maintain broad general knowledge and interests. Niche specialists are only useful in their specialist niches. And the more broad sort of world experience you have and interests you have, the better you are going to be able to spot those big structural inefficiencies in society. And never lose your passion. It's the one thing that's going to see you through tough times. So I know a lot of you are really passionate about what you do, and it's really wonderful to see. And passionate people are heaps fun to work with. It's much more fun to work with someone who's totally involved in what they're doing than someone who isn't. So that's all I really have to say. And Glenn and I are going to have the Android versus iPhone set up later, so you can ask us questions there.
No, I never shoot it on there, man.
Hi, I guess I get to be the token chick. I was the only girl in applied maths in year 13, and in those days that meant that from our high school we had to actually poke the cards with knitting needles, and then we had to mail them to IBM here in Wellington, and they would run our code, and 2 weeks later you'd get it back, and you'd know whether you'd poked the correct holes in your punch card, and if you hadn't, you had to do it all over again. So it was the slowest experience of my life, and I was, you know, it was odd. I had to transfer to a boys' high school to do it, because my school didn't even teach it at my girls' school. And so it was a good setup really for me, because I ended up eventually going to university in the States. I did a master's, half in environmental health and half in engineering. So I found for me, having a background in kind of slow computing in New Zealand, when I got my first modem, which was the size of a filing cabinet in my bedroom, I was like seriously on my way to geekdom, and you used to have to write code. So I know like there are people who are my age in the room, but just for the younger people, humour me here for a second, because I used to have to go through this thing called a Kermit in order to get onto the internet, and I go for an Kermit, and you used to have to write code to use the internet. And so I had a big project I was working on in the States for the National Institute of Health, and I was running big epidemiological database stuff for them. And the only way I could run it was to run it overnight. So it would take me 24 hours to download the data I needed to download. And when I bought my first Mac, I couldn't believe it. I sat there and used to have to put in the WordPerfect disks, the floppies, and it would take 2 or 3 floppies just to be able to word process, and it didn't have any way of storing them. But it was the most magical thing to suddenly type on my screen and see what I was going to get. And that was really when I was hooked, because prior to that it was just some kind of intellectual exercise really. And when I finally could figure out what it was I wanted to achieve with the code, it made sense to me. And so for me, I've spent the last 20 years as an entrepreneur. I built out of that kind of real desire to make data useful. I ended up building a competitor to the ACC. It's the biggest private ACC insurer in New Zealand. We did 190 million in turnover, and then Labour got in and put us out of business. And so what really drove that was that we had phenomenal software systems. And a lot of companies aren't built on that kind of back, but what it was that, in that kind of way of saying there's a really big problem, we saw that there were really big problems with managing workers' compensation insurance, with managing injuries, and we could take the data heads and put them around what would be the best way possible to manage this. But if we did that without, to pick up on that empathy word, we did that without the human factor, it would just be meaningless. And it was a fantastic experience for me to literally start this thing in my bedroom as a geek and to grow it to almost a couple of hundred staff. And then when I sold out of that, I sold it to Southern Cross, sold my shares to them, and decided I would angel invest. And so I would back other entrepreneurs, and I was a spectacular failure at it. And that was fantastic for me, because I spent a few years going, if I think I'm so crash hot at building these kind of techie businesses, why can't I pick another entrepreneur to invest in?